Good evening, everyone. My name is Amelia Acosta Powell. I serve as the Associate Artistic Director at the Repertory Theater of St. Louis, and we are here tonight for another installment of Flippin the Script. I'm so excited to have as our guest our box office director, Ricki Marking-Camuto. Hey, Ricki.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to have you on tonight. Can you just start by introducing yourself and telling us what your role is at the Rep, how many years or seasons you've been at the Rep, and something unique about yourself that we might not know?
Okay. Well, my name is Ricki Marking-Camuto. I am the box office director. I have been at the Rep for 3.5 years, but I was a subscriber since the 94-95 season. And something interesting about me is I am a huge Nancy Drew fan. I've read all the books, read all the comic books, seen the TV shows. I collect the old hardbacks. And last month I got the privilege to be a guest on a fan panel through Dragon Con about the TV show.
Wait, what? That's amazing. Hold on. Did the panel already happen?
Yes, it happened last month. It should be on their YouTube channel.
Ricki, where was my invite? Okay, we're finding the link to that and we're going to drop it in the comments because that's incredible. That's so not what I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting, but that was not it. I'm thrilled about this information. And I did already know, but I just love that you were a subscriber before you came to work at the Rep. Can you tell us if you can't come up with just one of your favorite shows you saw at the Rep before you worked here?
Can I do one drama and one comedy?
Absolutely.
Okay. So my favorite drama was Old Wicked Songs. I don't exactly remember when I saw that, but it's a very, it's a two-hander about a young piano student and his older piano teacher, and the student is struggling with his religion, and then he finds out through the course of the show that his piano teacher was a Holocaust survivor. So very powerful, very intimate show. And then my favorite comedy was A Flea and Her Ear. I love farce, and that is just as farcical as you can get. A lot of mistaken identity, people running all over the place. I know sometimes farce gets a bad rap, but I just think it's amazing how the playwrights can make all these things just tie up in a neat bow at the end.
Totally. Love that. And also, those are not the shows that everyone says. So I appreciate that you have brought some new historical Rep productions into our ether, because so far everyone has talked about Mary Zimmerman's Metamorphoses. So I'm excited to go now and seek production photos of these plays that I didn't get to see. So your role as box office director, can you tell us what that means? What are the responsibilities of the box office director?
Okay, well, basically I'm in charge of the box office. So I oversee all of our staff for the box office, and those would be the people who, when you call in to buy tickets or exchange tickets, they're the ones handling you when you come up to the window to get your tickets the night of the show, everyone you interact with there. I also oversee our database manager. So he's the one of making sure that all of the information in our system is correct. I do a lot of the back end stuff in our ticketing system. It's called Patron Manager. It's actually a CRM system. So it's also highly used by other departments such as marketing and development and finance. And I do lead a meeting once a month so we can all get together on the same page, since so many different departments use it. I run a lot of daily reports. And Dan, who's our database administrator, he's really the report guru, but I take some of his reports and modify them as needed so that we can get all the reports we need. And I also, when we have live shows, one of the things that we do is we do offer tickets as auction and raffle items to other nonprofits. So I am in charge of sending those out.
Amazing. I just want to highlight, because that was a very humble description, I think, of the things that you do. But I just want to highlight, I think that the amount of data that comes through your office is so critical, because for us to decide, what's successful or not, what we want to keep doing the same or what we want to change about how we operate, all of that comes down to, or not all of it, but one of the big factors for how we make those decisions comes down to the data that you're describing in these reports. So I think that's super cool. You also are spending the most time in direct contact with our patrons and our audience members, right?
Yes.
Both like when they are buying tickets, when they are actually coming to the shows, when they want to offer feedback. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So the box office we're the front line. So if you're calling the rep about something, you're getting the box office, which means we need to work very much in partnership with all of the departments to know what is going on so that we can get our patrons the information that they need. We also sometimes we get some calls not even for the rep. We sometimes just get general calls about, hey, what theater is going on in St. Louis? And if it is not a busy time for us, we will take the time to research that and help our callers out. We also do get feedback, both good and bad. And that is why to be in box office, it's so important to have a strong customer service mentality. We really listen to our patrons. No matter what you are calling us about, we do listen. We do pass it on. We know how important the rep is to you. So we very much value your feedback.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the rep is such a long-standing part of so many people's lives and routines and relationships. And you're a beautiful example of that, right? Like, you were coming to the rep and that made you want to spend even more time here and come work here. And I'm sure that you know a lot more stories than I do about how people have interacted with the rep. Like, because of how important it is for people to sit with their other parties that people come with, longtime friends, and really make the rep part of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. So everyone loves a good origin story. Before we talk more about the box office, I want to talk about, and you've already told us that you started as a subscriber. I want to talk about how you got here. What was your trajectory into theater? Like, did you act as a kid, or how did you get interested in theater? And then how did you get interested in actually working in the industry?
So when I was 5, my dad took me to the Muni. And for some reason, the show he picked was Shenandoah. I did not understand it, but I thought it was so cool to see these actors live on stage, acting out the show. And I can still remember what parts of the set looked like. And that just really started my love of theater. When I got to high school, my freshman year of high school, which would have been the 94-95 season, the rep was putting on the Cane Mutiny Court Martial, and then the next show of the season was Black Coffee, which is an Agatha Christie. My dad, he's a retired captain from the Navy Reserves, but at the time he was in the Navy Reserves, very much wanted to see the Cane Mutiny Court Martial, and he knew I was a huge Agatha Christie fan, so he figured I'd like Black Coffee. So he decided this would be a great father-daughter thing to do, and he got us a subscription. And so we subscribed from then on out for 3 years. He moved to Wisconsin, but I kept the subscription while he was up there. And then my parents moved back and we resumed going together. All throughout high school, I did props for all the shows at my school, and I even did props for a couple shows at one of the boys' high schools. And so I thought that, I really wanted to do the tech side of things. I also really wanted to be a teacher. So I knew that high schools only have one theater teacher. So I knew I couldn't just major in theater. So I decided I was going to go to school and major in theater and math and get my secondary ed certificate. Lindenwood was willing to let me do this. Plus, they gave me a full ride. So that's where I registered. A senior year of high school, second semester, I took ACC Calc 2, which was Advanced College Credit through SLU's 1818 program. I finished my exam and I said I never want to take another math class again. That was the first math class I've ever hated. And I was just like, I'm done with math. I now don't know what I'm going to do with my life. So I sat down with my parents and we talked about it. And I was like, I don't think it makes sense for me to become a teacher if, I don't have a second subject. So my dad was looking through Lindenwood's course catalog and he noticed that they had a theater management major. And he's like, hey, this sounds interesting. And I looked at it, I was like, yeah, hey, that does sound interesting. So I called and changed my major before I even set foot in the school. So I ended up getting my bachelor's in theater management, which was basically a combined general theater and business degree. While in undergrad, I began stage managing and assistant stage managing a lot of shows, which I loved. I especially loved assistant stage managing. So when it came time to graduate, I was only 20 when I graduated. I did not really feel ready to just go out in the world yet. So I decided I was going to stay on for grad school. And I had talked to my advisor and I was like, look, I really want to do stage management. You don't offer a stage management degree for an MFA. And he's like, well, we could create one, or have you thought about directing? I was like, well, I don't know. He goes, well, you want to teach college, right? I was like, yeah, because at the time that's what I wanted to do. And he's like, directing would help you with that. So I ended up getting my MFA in directing. While I was in grad school, I got hired on as the youth arts coordinator at the West County YMCA. It's now the Chesterfield YMCA. And so I was in charge of all of the youth arts programming there. So camps, plays, art classes, anything that was youth and arts. Eventually, after a couple of years, I went full-time and became the artistic director for the Chesterfield Community Theater out there. I still focused a lot on youth, but we also did have adults. By the time I left there, we had a kids troupe that was 2nd through 8th grade. We had a middle school only one. We had a high school only one. We had an improv team. We had our adults, and we had a theater for young audiences, which I often also acted in. That and I it was a small, very small department. I did almost everything. I directed the majority of the shows. I, did all the rights and all the other paperwork involved. I wrote the grants. I designed sets. I designed lights. I bought all the costumes and props. I usually ran either lights or sound during a show. And of course, I ran the box office. And I honestly got a little bit burned out of doing all of that. We did 14 shows a year, so that was quite a lot for a community theater. I left there and I went to Dance St. Louis as their box office manager. And I was there for about 3 years. I think it was exactly 3 years. And then I ended up at the Rep, and I'm so excited to finally be here.
That is an incredible story. And I'm really struck by just how many of the major institutions of our region that you have been affiliated with. Like, I don't know if folks are watching who aren't from or familiar with the St. Louis area, you named various major universities as well as arts organizations and community organizations like that. I just think that's super, super cool and offers such an advantage to the Rep of having someone who's such a local, like a true local who's deeply embedded in the community and in these institutions to offer insight into what this community needs and wants. So it makes sense that you are really you talked about how your role really needs to be good at customer service, and it makes sense to me that you are excellent at being of service to the folks who share your passions and who are from this area. That's amazing. And holding all of those roles is really, really hard. That is beautiful that you have done all of that work. And I also think, again, it's just a huge opportunity for the Rep. I don't know that every arts institution is so lucky to have someone who has such a rich understanding of all of the different pieces of the work, because I think it really helps when you are talking to patrons. I know that you help people think about what plays they might want to come see, what they might want to put in their subscription if they're doing like a pick package where they select certain shows. I know that you are responsive when people have questions or concerns about shows, and to be able to really do that in a rich way where you have a hands-on experience of every single aspect you're talking about, that's amazing. And we are so lucky to have you in that seat.
Thank you.
Thank you. Besides the kind of obvious aspects that the folks who come to the box office or call the box office would know about, I think that you all have some unique tasks that might not be as obvious on the surface. So I'm curious, what are the unique tasks that you or your team is responsible for that a general patron would never see?
Okay, so I actually like to joke that we are the box office because we sign for almost every package that comes to the Rep. And that might not sound that like a lot, but the amount that our shops need to buy for each production, as well as the actors, we house them on site. And so all of their mail comes to us. And a lot of them, if they are coming from out of town and flying, will ship all of their stuff they need for their apartment here. So sometimes you can barely walk in the house manager's office, which is where all those boxes go, because of the amount that have come in. So after we sign for them, we also have to make sure they get to whichever department or to the actors themselves, whoever needs them.
That's so true. And in fact, it's not just like the shops and the official Rep stuff and the actors stuff, because also staff who might not have a secure lobby at their apartment building or something also have stuff shipped to the Rep. So now I have to ask you, tell me the truth. Do you notice who shops where, and do you judge us for our purchases?
No, we do not judge, but we do sometimes. Yeah, you can tell where a box comes from. Can always tell when we have actors with pets, because we'll get a lot of boxes from Chewy. So things like that. One time we got a box that said fakesnow.com. Didn't say who it was to, but I figured that must be props because it was from a company called fakesnow.com.
You don't know. An actor might want to decorate their apartment with fake snow.
Maybe. You never know.
I bet you were right, though. That's amazing. And then, like we started to talk about, you all also have the most direct interaction on the front lines with the audience. Can you share any comment or story that you've heard from a patron about seeing a Rep show that will stick with you?
Well, I was working the rush window one night, and a patron came up to buy a rush ticket, and she was a subscriber. And so I'm looking in her account, and I'm like, "Oh, you still have one of your guest passes." And she said, "Yeah, I know. I'm actually going to use it next week to bring my friend. So I'd like to buy a rush ticket today." I was like, "Oh, okay. You must really like the show." She said, "Yes, I've seen it twice already." So she ended up seeing the show 4 times. And I've been racking my brain all day since I got that question to figure out what show that was. And it was either Alabama Story or Oslo. I know it was that winter, and those two shows were back to back. I'm thinking it was Alabama Story because it was very, very cold. So I'm thinking it was that one.
That's amazing. I love when people come back. I personally am someone who does like to see shows more than once because you just notice different things. But I also recognize that theater tickets can be really expensive. So not everyone can do that. But it really is incredibly meaningful, certainly on the artist side, like when you know that people are coming back over and over. That's beautiful. I will save it until we go off of live to ask you what upsetting stories you will never forget from patron feedback. I'm curious. So you've done so many different things. Oh, and before I ask you this question, let me just also say I have a couple questions left for Ricki, but if you are watching and you have a question for Ricki, please feel free to put that in the comments on Facebook or the chat on YouTube, and we will ask her. I've heard she'll answer anything. So you've held so many roles, like you were just telling us, and I'm curious what advice you might have for a young person who's where you were that senior year of high school, trying to figure out what to do with their lives if they're interested in the management side of theater or in being a box office director.
I'd say if you're interested in, the management side of theater, not only get those core theater foundations and seriously learn what every single department of theater does, but also get some business classes. And one thing I did not get to take that I really, really, really wish I got to was a grant writing class. I had to learn how to write grants on my own. And a lot of thanks to one of the grant officers we had, Michael Donovan at MAC. He was amazing in helping me write grants when he was a grant officer and not, the head of Missouri Arts Council. So shout out to him. But definitely, yes, learn how to write grants, learn some business. If you're interested in being a box office manager or box office director, you don't have to have a background in theater or, dance or opera or whoever's box office, music, if you're doing the symphony. But you need to have an appreciation for the art. It really, really helps. And it really helps to be interested in, seeing every performance you can see. Also, you don't need a business degree for that, but I do suggest that you have some basic level accounting. There is a lot of math involved in ticketing and in selling the tickets. And, every morning I have to reconcile the report from the day before. So definitely some basic accounting is great. Also helps to have a love of numbers because, as we mentioned, there are a lot of reports going out. So, being interested in those reports and knowing how to read them is also a skill you might want to develop.
Absolutely. I think that's great. And I also would just share that different people who have your same title at different organizations probably have jobs that are somewhat different, even though I'm sure there's also a lot of overlap. But you've been able to implement all of these various skills, not only to be a great box office director, but you also sit on our senior staff team and discuss with us not only issues pertaining to box office, but kind of the 30,000 foot view of organizational decision making when it comes to everything from, season selection and problem solving. Well, this year, COVID strategizing, and more. And I'm just curious if you can talk about how having the box office director seat, or for you personally, how it works to be in that room.
Well, like I said, the box office is basically the front line. So we get questions about everything. So being on the senior management team and on the COVID safety committee, and that it just helps me have the answers that I can immediately share with my staff, rather than having to go find the answers. So when my staff asks a question, I am able to give them an answer right then. And honestly, with COVID, we're all working remotely, so that's kind of weird for a box office to be remote. But we are, and we have made it work. And we use this application called Slack, which really, really helps us stay connected. When I find out something in a meeting that's important, I can actually let them know right then, rather than having to wait an hour or two till I'm done with my meetings for the day and able to debrief them. Also it just helps with a sense of community, but it is just great that I can really be there for my staff and answer their questions immediately. And then when they have a question and I don't know the answer to, I do know who will have that answer, so I can either go to them or let my staff know who they can ask.
You framed that answer in terms of how it's helpful for you to be in that meeting and how that serves you and your staff's work, which is important and is great. I'm going to have to step in to tell our listeners how you being at that table helps the organization, which is huge, because prior to your joining of the senior management team, we were still having conversations about if we make this choice, how will audiences react to that? Or if we have a challenging piece of news to deliver, how will we best communicate that? And having you there to really speak immediately to I've been talking to people all week and this is what they have to say. Or, last time we sent a communication like this is the feedback we received, so we want to be responsive to that. I mean, that's absolutely critical. And I think it's a huge piece of how we've been able to successfully navigate a really challenging time. So I'm really grateful to have you at that table, as is my cat, Frida. Good grief. Bye now. And so the challenges of the box office going remote that you named, I just also have to highlight, you've turned into a remote box office director this year. And at the same time, you've turned into a remote teacher / parent of a beautiful daughter who's navigating a challenging year as well. And I know that you're an incredible mom too. How has that gone this year?
Well, luckily my daughter is 4, so she's in preschool and they actually meet in person. So she's not here during most of the day. I had her homesick last week, and that is challenging. I really feel for those parents out there who have their kids home and are trying to help their kids either with homework or just, find someone to keep them busy while also working. That is amazing. Like I said, I'm lucky that mine is in preschool, and her preschool, they have been very, very safe with the COVID procedures and have not had to close at all or even had any scares or any quarantining. So that's a miracle, and I'm really grateful for that. But she gets home usually around 4:15. So when I have a later meeting, sometimes she likes to pop in and see what's going on.
I mean, I have to say, I'm loving it. I was fortunate because she was at work sometimes when we were in person. So I had gotten to meet her, but I'm actually loving getting to see everyone's beautiful families because, We do have lives outside of the rep sometimes. Or I should say some of y'all do. Not me, but y'all.
She always liked coming up whenever we had opening nights and I'd have to work opening nights. She and my husband would come up and we'd go out to dinner beforehand. And she always had to go into the theater and see what the set looked like. And she keeps asking me, she's like, when can I go to your work again? I want to go see the stage again. And she's also really missing the ITC performances.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, for sure. We all are. Absolutely. Do you know what her favorite set she saw was, or what was the set that made her have a huge reaction?
I don't really know. I know she liked the Play That Goes Wrong set because she liked the Chase Lounge that was up there.
Sure.
And as far as ITC shows go, I think Polka Dots was her favorite. And she was a little on the young end for that audience, but we saw the dress rehearsal. And then we also caught it when it was at the History Museum. And she kept asking me, she goes, can we see it again? Can we see it again? I'm like, you can't. There's no more performances.
Yeah.
But that was
hard talk to have, but theater is ephemeral and she will literally never be able to see that exact performance again. But that's awesome. Well, I hope that she gets to come see a set and an ITC show really soon. But the answer to when can I come to your work is you live here.
Yeah.
Amazing. I have one last question for you before we go to our lightning round. And that is, if you suddenly had magical powers, you could just snap your fingers and change something about the theater industry, what would you change?
I think that audiences today are not exposed enough to the rich history of theater. Most theaters today tend to put on modern drama. So from Ibsen to the present, more heavily on the present side than the Ibsen side, but that's what most theaters do. We do have theaters who do Shakespeare, and Shakespeare is great, but there is so much else. Also, I don't think Shakespeare is necessarily the most accessible. I think some of the other Elizabethan playwrights, such as Marlowe and Johnson, are actually easier to understand. And I think since a lot of people, their first exposure to reading a play is Shakespeare, I think honestly, if they read something else, they might stick with it more and be more interested. But, every so often you'll see a Greek tragedy, but, there's Greek comedies, there's Roman comedies, there's Restoration. I love Restoration comedies. One of my favorite scripts is The Beaux' Stratagem, which I've never seen a production of, but I would love to see a production of. But nobody does Restoration comedies. I think the Rep sometime in the last 20 years did a Moliere, so a little neoclassical, but most places, if it's not modern, it doesn't get done anymore.
That is really interesting. I'm going to take this feedback to heart in a couple of ways. Thank you for that. It's been such a pleasure learning more about your history at the organization and just in the industry, and you have shared a lot of words of wisdom. So thank you for all of that. As you know, we close out our sessions of Flippin' the Script with a lightning round called Fun Facts in 60 Seconds. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Well, first I'm going to set a timer. And ask you a series of easy questions and answer as many of them as we can in 60 seconds. 1 second. Okay. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. What's your favorite board game?
10 Days in Europe.
Never heard of it. What's your favorite color?
Teal.
What's the last book you read?
I'm currently reading a biography of Frederick Douglass that I'm almost finished with. Nice.
What's your favorite vacation spot?
New Hampshire.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
I still don't know.
That's odd. What's your favorite pizza topping?
Mushrooms.
Puppies or kittens?
Puppies.
What's your favorite social media platform?
Instagram.
Who's your favorite visual artist?
I don't have one.
Fair enough. What's your favorite way to relax?
Read.
Driving or flying?
Driving.
Favorite film genre?
Mystery.
Favorite type of performing art?
Theater.
Not a given. Worth asking. I reacted to all of those, so I didn't really give you a fair shot at the 60 seconds. But thank you so much for playing Fun Facts in 60 Seconds. Thank you for being a guest on Flippin' the Script and for just being all around a pleasure to work with. I'm so fortunate to get to spend time with you, and I'm really glad to get a chance to share who you are with some of our audience members through this episode. So thanks for spending the night with us, Ricki.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you all soon. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Flippin' the Script.